there are a number of challenges, but I think they come from a place for me of real excitement and enthusiasm as where we're going and where in particular Xcel Energy is really like dialed in as our focus. And we were the first utility years ago to say we're going to be 100% carbon free by 2050. So that's an incredibly bold, exciting vision, and we sort of believe it, and I believe it like deep in my ethos. But it also comes with real challenges, especially in a growth environment, right? So we are well along our journey in this, and I think that's a part of the challenge for us is we're really a leader, way out front, and we have resource plans that are approved that'll make us 80% carbon free by 2030. So dead on kind of our goals. But what that means is we're solving now for that last really hard 10 to 20%. We have wind, we're stepping really heavily into solar kind of in this next round. But what's that last 10 to 20% of dispatchable generation that we need? And so we're at this place of kind of from a leadership standpoint, how do we push our teams and our policymakers and our stakeholders to say, all right, are we ready to dig in and kind of solve that last 10 to 20% in an era where now we have growth associated with it as well? And then the big third piece of that, do it in a way that brings our customers along and as the lowest possible cost way of doing it, while giving them kind of that reliable service that they depend on and will increasingly depend on as we electrify the other parts of their lives, transportation, maybe where they work. So those are the big things that require a lot of leadership. I know your background kind of with the commission across utility, commission, policymakers, stakeholders. How do we really work together to solve these complex problems?
Yeah. Reflecting on that point, I think in a world where growth has been flat, we could kind of do things the way we always did things. Oh, we're going to build some incremental wind. We have a infrastructure plan to incrementally build our substations and power lines and transmission. When you flip that and you say, now we're in a growth phase that looks more like the 60s and the 70s, and we didn't really expect it even 5 years ago, collaboration is really key. And it's collaboration between the public sector, the regulatory decision makers, the legislature, sort of the public policy world needs to collaborate with the utility, who then in turn need to collaborate with sort of the technology innovators, all in service of delivering sort of this premise of customer centricity. If the customer isn't happy, if we're not delivering better solutions for our customer, it's just not going to be, they're not going to accept it. And all of the things that we want to achieve from a net zero perspective, from an electrification perspective, are going to be sort of for naught because the customer is just going to say no. And I think that's something I really appreciate about Xcel Energy is the degree to which you're really putting your customer at the center of this journey and this transformation. But that's just a different approach, right? Historically, it's always been the one-way flow of electricity and the other way flow of money. And that's kind of been a system that's worked. And that system is sort of stressing. And so we have to have this sort of two-way flows of energy and compensation. And it's a challenge, but it's also the opportunity. And I think it's the opportunity that we at Kraken are so excited about taking the lessons that we've learned globally, engaging with our customers, building the largest virtual power plants in the world, and saying, how do we actually partner with Xcel Energy and the like to bring best-in-class technology with best-in-class execution and infrastructure, deliver something to the customer that's really going to be transformational.
Well, I think one of the things that we're focused on is customer. And we are in a learning curve on that. Because if you think about, Xcel has always put customer at the center of what we do. We're clean energy transition, we're enhance the customer experience, and we're doing it in a way that keep bills low for our customer. But it's a changing environment for what the customer wants, right? They want cleaner and cleaner energy. They want to control what type of energy they use and when. They want products that help them do that. They have electric vehicles. There's a number of things that are changing that relationship. And the one thing that is true of utilities, it's sometimes we're not the fastest moving and the fastest to adapt and the fastest to grab onto the technology that's going to make that relationship work better. And so I think in my role, fairly new role as Chief Customer Officer, we really have to push ourselves in that space and say, are we communicating transparently enough? Are we giving our customers the technology they need to really use our product in the way that they want to use it? And so I think that's a unique sort of utility challenge that we're facing from the customer side that we need to kind of grab onto and say, we haven't been perfect historically, but we really need to make this the continued center of what we think about so we can deliver for our customers as the energy relationship changes between us.
That so resonates. I think we're in this place where all electrification, growth of new technologies on the grid are actually creating a forcing function to drive the transformation of utility customer organization. And I think historically there's been a bit of lip service. Oh yes, we want to transform it, but there has never been the imperative. We are now like, you must transform or else you're going to hit these real blockers with your customers. And it's exciting to hear how you in this leadership role and Xcel are really leaning into the fact that we have to change how we go about doing this business, ways that we've done business for a long time. And so
some of that is picking apart kind of the metrics even that we've used historically to say, is that really a customer-facing metric? Or is that something that we're looking at that's more of an operations metric? I mean, we're engineers and accountants and all that. And so really pushing ourselves on what's the customer lens and how are we measuring that is a key focus of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only sort of reflection I'll share there is historically in utilities that I've worked with and now in the sort of as a provider of sort of technology solutions to utilities, a lot of the sort of customer-centric capabilities, whether it's dynamic rates or services like electric vehicles or heat pumps or what have you, have always lived in these customer program silos. Mm-hmm. And they're very sort of answerable to the metrics for that program by the regulator. The transformation that I'm seeing, and I think we certainly are seeing happening in Xcel, is these are actually core customer organization functions, which means you actually have to transform your customer organization a bit. But it's actually once that transformation starts, you unlock so much opportunity. And that's what's exciting. I think that growth mindset that Xcel has, that that you and your team have, is I think what really excites us at Kraken and I think the industry as looking to, this is how it's done, this is how you transform customer experience.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about that is I think our employees have always been there. They know how important our customers are. They want to show up in the most amazing way for our customers. Part of this is, are we set up structurally to allow them to do that, to break these silos down and allow them to really show up for the customer in the way that they want to? Yeah. So we're really focused on
that. I mean, utilities sometimes get a bad rap, I think, for not being sort of innovation-minded enough. And in my experience as someone who's worked for a regulator close with utilities, sometimes it's actually on us as the regulators to give the utilities the tools to do the things that your people are ready to go and do. And that's where I think that collaboration around you have amazing people at our utilities across the country. They want to innovate. They know the customer so well. Let's actually empower them to engage and deliver better experiences. So very much resonates. Octopus Energy Group is a global energy technology company operating predominantly in Europe, Australia, Japan, and also in the US. So we're seeing the data center from a number of different sides. In the UK and Europe, where we have very large direct-to-consumer retail businesses, we're actually serving data centers, and they're coming to us. And the big conversations we're having with them are, how do we meet our net zero goals? How do we provide them, first, 100% renewable over the course of a year, but put them on a path to increasingly time matching their use of electricity with the solar and wind resources that we can procure for them. So it is reorienting us both towards how do we structure renewable energy deals to align with when data centers use, but also being a partner of theirs to help find connection to the grid. If every conversation I have with data center operators starts with, I just don't know where I'm going to put this thing. How do I get it connected faster? And so thinking about solutions like building energy storage behind the meter to facilitate that. So that's a big part of it. But on the software side, there's this question of how do you actually make the data center itself more flexible? And how do you actually shift based on market signals of prices or carbon or the priorities that utility may have to say, hey, these hours are hours where I need you to drop your consumption. How do I actually help the data center reduce its consumption during the 50, 100, 200 top hours that then allow you to feel comfortable saying, yep, I can connect you as long as during those 200 hours, I know that you're not going to be 500 megawatts, you're going to be 300 megawatts. That's a technology challenge. So it's definitely something that we're challenged with, but we're really excited about.
That speed piece is so important, and that kind of flexible, thinking around flexibility of load is a way to meet some of those speed challenges. For me, it's been, and for Xcel, it's a massive shift. I mean, having the what's happened with the data centers and that kind of coming on the scene in the way it has. I mean, we're 8 states, right? And there is interest across those 8 states from data centers coming in and saying, all right, both kind of for cloud compute and generative AI, we have this massive need. I mean, if you think about, let's just take Colorado as an example. I think it's like 7,500 megawatts peak load. We have more than 9,000 megawatts in our pipeline across our 8 states. So if you think about that magnitude, it's almost even hard to kind of get your head around. We're looking to serve about a third of that by 2030, but even that, we're kind of in these walls and in conversations with policymakers and stakeholders saying, even with the about 3 gigawatts, call it, that we want to deliver by 2030 in data center load, how do we increase the speed of regulatory where if we go through a resource plan, that doesn't have to take 18 to 24 months, because we know that the timeline that we're facing doesn't overlay very well on the timeline kind of how fast the data centers want to move. So how do we think about getting creative around those things? Back to customer, first and foremost for us, guiding principle number 1 is this has to be net beneficial to existing customers. We are not going to bring data centers on and have that be a negative impact on our existing customers. That is a commitment that we are making, and I think it's incredibly important. But I think we can do it. I think we can bring them on and have kind of a win across the board, because this is an affordability lever, right? If you can spread more megawatts across these fixed assets that we have to invest in, that can be net beneficial to customers, but we just have to be really mindful of that as we work through these issues and the negotiations, and whether it's contracts or tariffs. The other thing that really excites me about this opportunity, I talked a little bit about our clean energy journey, and that we are way out in front on that. So we're already in resource plans looking to solve for that last 10 to 20% to get to 100% carbon free. We need new technology for that. We need clean, firm, dispatchable technology. So do data centers. So now you have some of the biggest companies in the world that we're very policy aligned on how do we move that technology faster? How do we push federal and state policy? How do we get there? And I want to partner with them to do that, because we all need it. So let's lock arms and let's get there. Let's solve that problem for our country, for our world. Let's do it.
Agree. I think that's exactly right. It is the challenge and the opportunity of our time. I'd say first and foremost, it's really important for the next generation to recognize there's amazing opportunities for life to be better. And there's a lot of doom and gloom out there right now. Climate change is creating a lot of really scary weather events, and just it's really scary, and bad things are happening. But we can't just sort of say, well, it's too late, throw our hands up. There's still a lot that we can do, and and that's going to create abundance, it's going to create prosperity for people in our immediate communities and globally. So I think start with hope, but also recognize it's going to take a lot of work, and we're going to have to work not just amongst our sort of small sort of cohorts of people. Well, technology companies work with technology companies, or I think the theme we've talked about is we have to work together. We have to sort of reach across the aisle, reach across sort of like the lines that we don't necessarily reach across. So I think really focusing on hope, really focusing on working together, that's a starting point. I do also think that when you're thinking about careers, we need people who are going to be going into homes, turning wrenches. So the trades are an amazing opportunity. That one of the things that the energy transition, is going to need, and frankly we're struggling with, is those frontline line workers, or the folks who are going to install all those heat pumps. And so finding ways, if those opportunities are available, to really lean into how do I, even if I eventually want to be chief customer officer of Xcel Energy, starting at that front line is an amazing opportunity to find a way into the industry and have a really durable impact. So I would say those are sort of three sort of key points of advice that I give to folks.
So I guess I sort of, when I think of advice, I kind of reflect on what's worked for me in my career, and I would say first and foremost, it's just like bring your whole self to work. You're allowed to sort of be your authentic self, and I think it actually makes for such a more fun and like joyous way to spend what is a lot of your life. And so that has sort of been my, my touchstone. Am I in a place where I can be myself, I can feel joy in what I'm doing? And that doesn't mean I haven't had to polish up. It doesn't mean to be your authentic self without having to be kind of self-aware and thinking through how to be a better version of yourself. But I think you're going to be the most successful if you start from that place. And then I would just say, find ways to sit down face to face with people. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be the one to say, I actually don't understand that. So maybe it's in the meeting, after the meeting, you go sit down with the person and say, can you talk me through what an energy market is? I think sometimes we're afraid to do that. So we go through a lot of meetings and a lot of our hours like pretending like we know more than we know. And it's just such a missed opportunity. And that's, I think, one of the things that that has helped me the most. I'm just not afraid, whether it's in a meeting or after the meeting, to go in and say, Nick, can you teach me about this software thing you were talking about? I actually didn't follow that at all. And it's helped me to really ramp in what's a pretty complex business way faster than if I'm hiding that away, or I'm trying to read my way through that and trying to solve for it on my own. And it's sort of connected to being more open and more authentic in what you know and don't know. And so I always share that because I think it's really important for everyone's growth, including my own.
Thank you, man.